Bonsoir. Good evening. Bonsoir. Today I want to talk to you about the Slavic languages, something that I've not really talked about much on this channel compared to the Celtic languages, the Germanic languages, and the Romance languages. And the reason why I've not done that is because I don't know as much about them as I do languages for the West overall. And so I'm asking the question, which language should you learn? And who are you? Well, I'm assuming you speak English if you're listening to this, though YouTube does auto-dub things now, so who knows. My name is Benjamin. Let me know what your name is down in the comments. For those of you who watch this channel regularly, one of the things I do is I look at languages from where the words in the language come from, the etymology, the roots of the vocabulary. And so when I'm learning a language, like I've looked at Romanian and Hebrew lately, I look at what languages have influenced them, and it gives me an idea of how the language works, or what layers are in the language. For instance, if I'm learning Italian, I know that the Latin layer is massive, and that because I took a class in Latin, I've basically got most of it, a big lump of it covered. If you're learning Swedish, let's go reverse that. If you're learning Finnish and you've got Swedish, it's going to come a lot easier to you than if you're a Spanish speaker without Swedish, because Swedish has influenced Finnish. So let's go through these languages. So first, what are they? East Slavic, Russian, Belarussian, Ukrainian. Now they're all smaller languages here and there that are Slavic, but I'm not going to really include every language, like Serbian in the eastern part of Germany. It's got like 20 or 30,000 speakers. Maybe I'll make a video about that sometime to do justice for it. Serbian is a member of the Western Slavic languages, which include Polish, Czech, Slovak, and then Southern Slavic languages, Serbian, Croatian, Slovenian, Bulgarian, Macedonian, those languages. And each of those are different. It's kind of like when Proto-Slavic diverged, it kind of split into three main branches. Now, Slavic is, the languages are closer together than either Germanic, Celtic, or Romance, because they didn't really break off until well after the year 1000, really, in most cases. And they had a standardized church language, which went a long way toward keeping them closer together. So let's start with Russian. Well, by the way, I'll go through all of these, explain what's in them, as far as the lexicon, the vocabulary, the etymology, and then I'll say, from coming from the West, our standpoint, by the West, I mean kind of England, Wales, France, Scotland, Ireland, North America, Western civilization widely as well, kind of the Mediterranean going, you know what I mean. So, Russian. It's got a massive influence of Finno-Ugric languages that spread across the north as Russian absorbed these speakers. Earlier in its history, it took a lot of influence from them. It also made the phonology much wider. It has a lot of vowels, a lot of sounds in Russian compared to other languages as far as palatalization, the sounds that you make after consonants like nya, those kinds of things. It has a lot of that. And vocabulary from Turkic languages going far to the east. This makes Russian very difficult. And it has a lot of words from Greek through the church, and that was kind of like their Latin, the Greek language, at one point, through the Byzantine Empire. So that's Russian. Ukrainian, or Belarussian, actually Belarussian is similar. It's just a less, I'm not going to say it's a version of Russian, it's just a less imperialist Slavic language in that same region, that it's not taken in as many influences. But it's kind of like Russian without as much of the Finno-Ugric influence, but it's got a bit more influence from Lithuanian, actually, which makes it a bit interesting. The government there is horrible. You should know that if you're learning that language. Moving on. So, Ukrainian. Now, contrary to what Stalin and others thought, it's not just a dialect of Russian. Peoples do that in history to stamp out identities. So, Ukrainian is special in that it's kind of a bridge. It is Eastern Slavic, but it's got influences from the West, and it's mutually intelligible in places. It depends on what dialect you speak. It's mutually intelligible in the western part of Ukraine with Poland. It's got a lot more in common with Polish in places than Russian, actually. Which makes it, if you're going to learn two languages, one from East and one from West Slavic, I would begin with Ukrainian, actually, and then learn Polish. Right? It's really handy for that. It's like I said, it's a bridge from East into West that reflects in its politics even today from the language itself. Let's go down south. Bulgarian. Grammatically, this is the most simple of the languages. It's easy, but like Belarussian, Serbian, Macedonian, Russian, Ukrainian, it uses a Cyrillic alphabet. So you've got to keep that in mind. That's going to be, I mean, you can, in a few weeks, that'd be no problem, but it is going to slow you down. You have to be aware of that. If you're coming from the West, it's going to slow the process. Now, this language, it's got like 13 or 14% Turkish. That's a consideration that's going to make the etymology, the vocabulary, distinct and more difficult. It's very Greek influenced. I mean, not modern Greek, Koine Greek from the Byzantine Empire. It's got a lot of that influence. And it doesn't have the case system quite. I mean, there's remnants of it, but you don't have to worry about that as much. Like I said, it's very simple in that way. But it's further removed from us. It was under Islamic occupation for centuries. And that's left an imprint upon the language and vocabulary as well that's, it's not going to be familiar with our non-Islamic Western culture. And I'm not saying that Bulgarians are Islamic, but it has changed their culture whether they like it or not. If you're occupied by a colonial power for centuries, it's going to change your language. Macedonian is similar, but it's not. It's actually part of what makes it different is it's not as Turkic influenced. It's further away, it's more up in the mountains. I'm not saying there's not mountains in Bulgaria, there are. It's more influenced by Serbians. And that's a different kind of South Slavic. It's moving away from the influence of Russian and Eastern Slavic. And you get Serbo-Croatian. The further you go toward the Adriatic coast, the more influence you had from Venice and that as a power. Also, Macedonian and Serbian, they have a larger bedrock of pre-Slavic words, the indigenous Balkan peoples before the Slavic migrations. It's faint. It's not very pronounced at all, but it is there. It is there, especially in parts of southern Serbia where they kind of collide with the Albanians. There's a residual element there of the language. Now, going up into Croatia, you've got a lot of influence, more influence from Latin. You begin to get a bit of Germanic influence from the days of the Holy Roman Empire. So, medieval German, I confuse the high and low. It's the German of Austria, basically, that influenced it, but not as much as Slovenian, which I'll get to in a minute. Croatian's interesting because it's got a lot of dialects, because the landscape has broken it up, and it wasn't really official, because Yugoslavia, the standard was, it was using the Serbian a lot of the times. And that's part of what happened with Yugoslavia breaking up. The other peoples didn't want to be turned into Serbs. Now you have the Bosnians. Strikingly, this language that they speak is not as Islamicized, even though they're kind of like a lot of them are Muslims, not all, but the peoples all around them refused to give up their native religion. But the Bosnians, many of them were colonists, and many of them are converts, and that's changed the language there a bit. So you have Serbian, which it's further removed from the coast, so it doesn't have the Latin influence that Croatian does. But Croatian also has influences from Italian and a faint bit of German, but it's really unique that it has modern Italian, or from the Renaissance forward, so not Latin, but Latinate. You see what I'm saying? And I mentioned a bit of German going north into Slovenia, still the Slavic languages of the south. It has a lot of Germanic or German influence. And this makes it's quite distinct because it's it's a more of a warmer language, but it has Germanic influence. As someone who, I've got Welsh, French, English, and one thing that I can say is that if you speak two large languages, suppose you speak Spanish and English, you really need a smaller language to balance out your understanding of what language even is. It's not just you learn it so you can travel across from Chile to Guatemala and go across all countries and not have to change language, because you're not learning culture at that point. You see what I'm saying? There's different sizes of languages, and each of them have a different vessel of what culture is. There's some things that smaller languages can do in terms of your relationships with people that larger languages simply can't, and vice versa. You can do things in large languages in terms of economics and politics and broader internationalism that you can't do in a smaller language. But the reverse is true. I've learned that a lot about Welsh, and I think Slovenian, with its 2.5 million people, that's going to give you I bet it clicked that, a closer feel. You're going to get to know people on a deeper level, I think. Not that you wouldn't get to know wonderful people in other Slavic countries, but when you're watching television programs or listening to the radio, you're going to enter a language that's its own world that's smaller. So you're going to become more familiar with people across a multitude of sectors that you're not going to get the immediate exposure to all those sectors within a language like Russian. Moving north, Czech was heavily Germanicized. There was a national revival. Part of what Hitler did when he invaded Czechoslovakia, then it's Czechia now, he wanted to end that national revival, essentially, that had begun to push the language back. Now, what Hitler did with language is another story, and in fact, that would make a really good video. Let me know if you want what he actually did with the German language. But with Czech, they actually went through a national revival and re-Slavicized and got rid of all the, not all, but most of the loanwords in their language. So actually what Czechs did and what Romanians did is the opposite, okay? So Romanians got rid of the Slavic influences in their language. I mean, they couldn't get rid of all of it, not even the sounds, but they re-Latinized their language. The Czechs, they re-Slavicized their language. And it makes, for us in the West, it makes it a bit difficult for us to learn it compared to, like, say, Croatian, which has more Latin and Italian influences. You see what I'm saying? So you have to keep that in mind, but it does have Prague. I hope I get to see this wonderful city. And Czechia have been wonderful to the Jewish people and Israel. Thank you so much. So it might be just worth learning for that. Moving on to Slovaks. This is kind of like the geographic center of the Slavic languages. If you think that Slavic languages can have a geographic, or languages can have a geographic center, even though it's quite far north and on the eastern edge of the Western Slavic languages, if you're going to do academic stuff in the Slavic languages, this is where I would begin, because it gives you a seed into all the other Slavic languages. It has forms that other Western Slavic languages don't, and it has forms that other, like, Eastern Slavic languages do, but yet it's got vocabulary similar to Czech, and I think it's got a number system similar to Slovenian. I might be wrong on that. And the case system is actually quite conservative in some places, which makes it mutually intelligible in places with Ukrainian and Bulgarian, which doesn't have the same case, but it preserves, if I'm right, the ending markers. It's either the ending markers or the beginning, but the point is it's the center. If you want to be a Slavic polyglot, this is where you begin, right? If you want to walk into like a polyglot conference and have like all the flags of all the Slavic languages and you just want to speak Slavic, you want to be like Slavic, you learn Slovak. Polish. This was kind of the Latin of the North. It was the center of learning. The universities, the churches, the legal system were all in Latin. Why? Because they were Roman Catholic, as a great kingdom, a power that was the biggest in Europe at one point. And they had these Russians over here, and they're like, what do we do with this? I mean, what do you do if you're next to Russia, right? So, they actually shifted their language to be more Western. They introduced words that were Latinate to shift them away politically from Russian influence in some cases. And they intentionally did this. And sometimes unintentionally, because the church was so strong. Poland was where many people went to try to then evangelize in other places, because it was the frontier of Catholicism. And this meant Latin just took over. I mean, it was omnipresent in Poland. And so Poland is the most, Croatian is definitely very Western in its language in some cases. But Poland is the most long-term. There's a longevity of seeking out Western influence. And that makes it quite different. And you get the richness of an ancient kingdom that basically tried to conquer the whole East at one point. So which language? Well, what do you think? I know which one I think makes more sense for a Westerner. Obviously the one with the most Latin, which is Polish. And politically, Poland is going to be a massive power in the coming century, because the Western Europeans have they've abandoned God, they've abandoned nation and family, they've abandoned a tax system that's fair to young business people, and Poland's like going all in for that. They want people to succeed, they want families, they want loads of kids, they're building churches, they are patriotic, they are expanding their military. It's wonderful. It's what every country in the West should be doing, really. Okay, I don't follow Christianity, I follow Judaism, but I don't want the West to lose its indigenous religion. And so, one thing about learning Polish, or any language, is that when you learn that language and you come back to your country, you're changed by Poland if you're learning Polish, or you're changed by Russian or Serbian. And which language did you learn? Polish, because you're going to bring back those ideas that love family, that love nation, that love God, that love people going out and building industries. You're going to bring that Polish language spirit back to the West. And that's going to change the West for the better. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.